I want to welcome you all in as we're currently listening to WKBC Radio. We're listening to Bob James and Dave Sanborn. Right, great tune. Since I Feel For You is the name of the tune, and I believe it is featuring Al Jarreau.
Yeah, yeah.
Great tune, great tune. Again, it is so wonderful to see you all. Brother Kyrie, welcome. I feel like I am really amongst family, right? So I don't know why I have been feeling nervous, but I have, right? But all of this helps. Um, Yes. So I am going to get us opened up as we begin to get started. Brother Kyrie, what's going on?
How you doing, brother Kev? Everything is going well. Glad to see you and be a part of this.
Great.
So,
So wonderful to have you here. Everyone, two things I want to say. First, this brother here, Brother Kyrie, he taught me how to change diapers. Right. I'm a visual learner. So I watched him as he changed the diapers of 15 of his children while coming over the house all the time. He don't quite have 15. I'm exaggerating a little bit, right? But he had a crew with him, and I just watched this brother, and uh he's been rocking with me since I think probably 1983 or something like that. Long time, long time.
since
Oh,
forever.
that's right, that's right.
Yes, sir.
And also, his brother's also a descendant of oh my God, why did it came in my mind and then it just left?
Nat,
Yes, this is a descendant of our brother in arms, Nat Turner.
Nat Turner. Yes,
Right.
sir. Uncle Nat.
That's right. That's with us. And also, I want to call y'all's attention to the background and Tim's uh, background. That is not a picture. That is his work, right? So if anyone ever needs a graphic artist to do drawings of whatever plan or whatever thing is coming up, right, in live events or whatever, he's fabulous. Fabulous, fabulous, fabulous. So let's go ahead and cut off WKBC radio and um and we're going to move forward. I'm going to start by getting us opened up. And let me ask in a way if I know I've been running my mouth already. I don't know if anybody here may be older than I. If there is someone here who knows that they're older than I, may I request permission to speak?
You may speak.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. So as we go and get ready to open up, I am going to open up in my traditional way. I'm going to burn a bit of sage. As we all settle in, what I like for you all to do, if you can, is to sit up in your seats and at least have both feet planted on the ground and just begin to breathe. Just begin to breathe in, to take the stuff that keeps us alive, and bring that into your body. And as you breathe, I am going to burn just a bit of sage, and you all can see as we go. And I'm going to send it to you all through this energy system that we call the internet. Right. Welcome, welcome, welcome. With this, I'm going to invite our ancestors in. And first, also acknowledging the indigenous ancestors, welcoming them into the space, recognizing that wherever we may be in this country, that we're on indigenous lands. I want to invite your ancestors in, asking those of your ancestors that would do good for you to come into the space, to speak, to whisper into your ears. I'm going to ask my ancestors to come into the space. I ask my mother, my, and all of the rest of my ancestors, my guides, my ancestors to come and to guide my thoughts, my words, and my actions. And I'm going to ask that the words that I shared to you are the words that's meant for everyone to hear, that it flows through me to you from the universe, from my ancestors, from your ancestors. Thinking about all of those that we stand upon, going back generations after generations after generations, giving honor to them, giving honor to all directions, the north, the south, the east, the west, the heavens above us, this spaceship that we call Earth, that takes us through space and time. And even though we feel like we are sitting still, to know that we are moving thousands and thousands of miles an hour. With that, let me ask you all, if you could, just unmute and just speak your name into the space. Just unmute and speak your name into the space. All at one time, all at one time.
Lucky came in.
Monique,
Teresa, Asley, Romance.
Philothea,
And
Eric Hawkins.
Muhammad.
thank you, thank you, thank you. Oh, it is again so wonderful to be here with you as we all get started. I have notes, right, of things that I want to say and talk about. I do have, so y'all will see me looking around because I'm looking at and getting the notes that I have so I can remember. I have a issue with following my notes, right? There's oftentimes I will prepare what it is that I want to say and talk about, and something else comes out. So I want to stick close, and a lot of what you will hear today is my story, right? So I think that I may not have a bit of a problem, but I just want to let y'all know that. So why are we here? First, we're here because we're starting a movement, and we want, need, and desire for you all to be with us. This movement is called Mature Global Citizens, right? And we will talk a little bit about that. And as an introduction to that and moving into it, I'll be introducing a three-part series that I'm going to be doing. And it's going to be for three cohorts, right? We're going to have a cohort for Black people. We're going to have a cohort for white people. We're going to have a cohort for people of color, right? That's part of the purpose for us being here today. Now, what is Mature Global Citizen, right? It is the creation of a shared humanity, right? And again, I'll talk more about this as we go on. I teased a little bit earlier, said that I had created 76 slides. I had spent a lot of time preparing. What do I want to share? What do I want to say? How do I want to do it? What information? Because I like going deep, and I know that generally y'all that show up like to go deep too, right? And then my team was like, this ain't the time, right? This ain't the time, and we want this to be more about story. So that's what it is. And then in doing this, I have it will be participatory in a way. Let me see, because I'm gonna need you all's help. That's not it. Let's go back and here's how I are y'all willing to help me a little bit with this? I saw one thumb. Okay, two thumbs up. I don't know what that means for everyone else. Y'all just sitting there. Okay. Here's what I need. I just put some words into the I don't know that the second thing that's not showing up well. Let me see if I can delete that and if that won't impact. Okay. So these words that are in the chat are words that I pulled from the description of the event today that you all received. And some of you all read the whole thing. Some of you all maybe just read part of it. Some of you all may not have read it at all, right? But these are words that's in it. As I go through my story today with you all, as you hear things that tie to these different words, I would like for you to put them in the chat. Put the word that you hear that resonates with the part of the story that you're hearing at that time into the chat. Can y'all do that for me? Do y'all understand what I'm asking?
Yes, Mr. Kevin Baker.
Okay.
So do
I
you want
mean,
us to send it out, the send the chats as we hear the words or as we record the words, or wait and to send?
no, as I'm going through the story and you hear something and I say something and you say, as I'm talking, you hear global responsibility. Put global responsibility in the chat. Okay, I say something and you hear identity and what I'm talking about. Put that in the chat.
And send it.
Yes, and send it.
Okay.
Right. Not to me, to the community. Right. I like for everyone to do and take part. Right. That will I will likely be looking a little bit at the chat, but not a lot. I'm going to just kind of tune in and begin to rock and roll. Well, this is kind of my way to ensure that I cover the things that I said that I would, right? And also to see if y'all are paying attention. Tim, were you about to say something?
No, I'm creating it. You're inspiring me to create a drawing. So I'm taking some notes that I'll share with you.
Okay.
If that's okay with you.
Oh, absolutely. Do you think I'm gonna turn down one of your drawings?
Lufia, you
fair
wrong
enough.
for that, girl.
Look, I may be crazy, but I'm not a fool.
You said, what did you say, Dr. Rashawn?
I said you wrong for that.
Oh Lord.
I
Oh
jumped
Lord.
the gun. I jumped the gun. And I've been
See,
trying to erase it. And of course, technologically, I
ain't,
don't know how.
ain't no need to erase it. Ain't no need to erase it because I did start off being miseducated.
No, you didn't.
Right. That's been a journey for me. Right. So as we go. So I mentioned mature global citizens. You may hear some things repeated. That's because I'm working to exercise the part of tell them what you want to tell them, then tell them, and then tell them what you told them, right? So I'm trying to exercise that as well. Now, So, mature global citizens, what we believe, humanity thrives when we recognize our fundamental interconnectedness. Every life holds inherent value and dignity, and we are strongest when guided by compassion, respect, and shared responsibility for our world. True leadership calls us to be stewards of the earth, to live with kindness, and to pursue harmony across all relationships. Through intentional acts, both large and small, we shape a future where love, courage, and empathy binds us together as we collectively reach for a world where we all can flourish. The vision: a world where all people and communities live with dignity and purpose, united through compassion, mutual respect, and ethical responsibility, honoring the interconnectedness of all life for present and future generations. The mission: to cultivate mature global citizens who lead with both soul and strategy. We develop leaders who can navigate complexity with wisdom, build bridges across difference, and create sustainable cultures of equity and belonging through a ready-to-be framework. Race equity, accessibility and access, difference, belonging, and being. We transform how people show up in the world. So that's a picture, right, of where we want to go. And we need your help, your participation as we all grow. Part of this may come up later in the story, but part of how this emerged is in a lot of the conversations that I have had about race equity and um, cultural change and all of that stuff. One of the things that I have heard a lot in the past is, well, we're all human. And that has struck me, right? Because it's something that I've questioned based on my experiences. Are we all human? My response generally has been maybe so. However, I believe that being human is a maturation process. Just because we are born does not mean that we're showing up as humans, right? We have to grow and learn and mature into this thing that we call humanity that oftentimes is misused in ways, right? Because we place that title on everyone regardless of how they act. And I just don't agree with that.
Yeah.
You know, this journey for me started when I was 8 years old. I grew up Catholic for those who don't know, right? I grew up Catholic and I remember sitting in the church and saying, why are y'all lying? Right? Why are y'all lying? Now, I don't know other than, the universal creator of and in all things was just speaking to me and saying that ain't true. That ain't true. But that was like the words that I was hearing going through my, that ain't true. That ain't true. That ain't true. And, so as I reflect on that, I begin to understand that that was a socialization process that started for me early, right? That starts with all of us early, all of these experiences and things that we have in this world, right? And that also set me off into this desire to find the truth. Okay, well, if that ain't true, then what is true, right? And what is truth? Over time, I have learned that what we call truth can be subjective in the sense that something that may be true for me today may not be true for me tomorrow, right? I had lots of truths when I was 20 years old. And then when I became 30 years old, some of them weren't quite as true anymore, right? And I had these new things that were truth. And then when I turned 40, the same thing happened, and so on and so forth. I'm not going to go no further than that because I'm really 39 or 36. I'm sorry. I turned 36 this year, right? So just so we are clear. Um, so truth is really something that's based on our position and where we are and where we're viewing something from. It is based on time, where we may be in time and space. It's based on our experience with things and how that may change things up. So part of it is to understand that when we want to talk about these things that we call truth, we have to hold it with an open hand and understand that maybe it is or maybe it isn't. You know, one of my brothers is here from Men of the Middle Passage, right? And it's a men's group that I co-founded years ago with Brother Jabari and other brothers, right? And we would get together to create space for Black men to come together and talk and be vulnerable and to share with one another. And of course, like everyone else, we come with complexity, right? We come with belief systems, all of these things. And one of the things that, we had brothers that practice different faiths. And I kind of felt like part of my role was to ensure that we stayed together, right? Despite difference. So brothers will begin sometimes to talk about truth and what the truth is about whatever situations. And I would always chime in and say, well, were you there? Right? Whether it's about religious things that books say that happened or historical things and all of that, folks would, just this is the truth. And I would always ask, were you there? Right? Again, wanting to create opportunity and space for multiple truths to exist together, right? This is difference. This is what I have found in my experience, and perhaps some of you all have experienced this as well, right? We tend to separate over differences. We fight over differences, we argue with differences. When So I'm reminded of something that came out of this book that some call the Quran, right? And it says that, and I may get it a little wrong, a little twisted. So, um, it says that we were all created different. I'm paraphrasing, right? We were all created different in order to learn how to get along, how to work with our difference. Am I close? Am I close to having that? Right? Somewhat. Okay. It's acceptable. Um, as we move through our world, this is the thing that has created so many issues for all of us. No one is exempt, right? It's dealing with difference. Part of the notion that you may have heard in talking about mature global citizens is how do we begin to work with, understand, learn, accept difference and others as well as ourselves, right? Because again, difference, the way I was at 20 was different than 25, different than 30, different, right? So in our life journeys we're going through, we're progressing, we're becoming different as we grow. How do we begin to do the work in order to accept and work with each other's differences, right? So that's part of what happens, right? What we're thinking about. And in order to do that, we all have to commit to personal work, right? Growing personally. One of the things with working, and dichotomous thinking, there's always been this concept, right, through whiteness, right, that work, your professional and your personal is separate and you keep them separate. There was an old saying that I used to hear a lot, right? And it was, everywhere I go, there I am. And what that began to mean for me is that you can't separate these things. You can't separate what you think, how you believe, what you accept as your truth from how you show up in the world. So, how do we grow ourselves to this place of accepting difference in each other? And I have found that it's a lifelong journey, right? Which really gives credence to this idea of learning or being a student from the cradle to the grave. So what I like is if you all could just take a second to just think about how are you dealing with difference and difference in other people, right? How is difference impacting your life, right? Just think about that. So my life journey has been about the upliftment of Black folks, right? I didn't say it in my introduction because I think so many here already know me, right? But one of the things that I generally say when I introduce myself is I'm from the capital of the Confederacy, right? Richmond, Virginia. That talks about my experience and what I witnessed, what I experienced, what I heard, what I saw. And the mistreatment, the abuse, the ignoring impacted me. So I decided to exercise what I call my outside strategy, right? For those that don't know, at one time I used to be known as Kevin X. Now, I know that it is it can be shocking to think of this mild-mannered, meek person here that you all know as Kevin as being, you know, tiny bit militant. I know that that's, hard to believe, but it's true, right? And there I was exercising my outside strategy. We're going to change the system, and this is how we do it, and totally outside. We're going to impact it. We're going to break it down. We're going to make things better. Well, it was didn't quite work the way I wanted it to, right? Oftentimes we have to look and think about the long game. One of the things that in my experience and doing that, it's you know, again, it was a desire to get to a place of why can't we all just get along? I think somebody else said that. Who should I give the quote to for saying that, right? But ultimately, I think that that's the desire, right? When we become a part of these movements, wherever they may be, is to, for some of us anyway, is to create a better world for us all to exist in. As Black people, as Indigenous peoples, a lot of our goal is how do we just be one? How do we be together, right? And how do we live in this world that wants to break us apart based on difference? So after all of that, life continued. I continued to move and to do, and life showed up, things happened, right? Hearts were broken, all of those things. And, let me welcome all of those that have come in, or welcome into the space. It's so good to see you all, and have you all here. Another part of the story. So I just revealed a fact about Kevin, right? Kevin used to be Kevin X. Right. Something else that is a part of my story, my life. And what I'm doing here is running to and rolling through things that have gotten me to this space where this idea, this notion for mature global citizens has come up, right? My story, my journey. And what I have learned is that there may be differences in our story, but ultimately our story is really the same, right? So one of the other facts about Kevin, right, is, in life there are highs and there are lows. And one of my lows was Kevin was a crackhead. Crack cocaine was something that I loved at the time, right? And I would tell people that today that God saved me, but the judge stopped me, right? There were several things that came out of that because I believe, first off, I was told when I was 19 years old. Now, this happened when I was 38, 39, right? But when I was 19 years old, I was told that around the age of 37, 38, 39, that I was going to be sick. That it would take me low, 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 low. It wouldn't kill me, but I would be sick. And then after that, this thing called resilience would come into play. Right. Now, I had forgotten all about that, right? Until I was sitting on a bunk in D Block in Richmond, Virginia, in the jail, right? So a question comes up for me when I think about that in my life, right? When I think about being told of this illness that I would have 20 years from now, from then. For me, one of the things that's come up is because we all believe that we have free will, right? And then we talk about this thing called fate. And the question is fate escapable? Do we have control over where our life, our journey goes? Some say yes, we have free will. We're created to do this thing, whatever it may be, whatever we decide we want it to be. Yet and still, now if I had my choice when I was 19 and I was told I was going to be sick, it's like, okay, I got to do everything to avoid the sickness. And I lived my life and ended up there. One of the reasons or one of the things that happened to me when I was in jail, and I believe that part of the purpose in my life's journey that the Creator said, this is going to be a part of your life, was to see a part of my people. Hey, Anita, welcome. Good to see you. One of the things I did when, Fridays was when we got commissary, but beginning of the week is when you would fill out your commissary paperwork, right, to get stuff. And I was sitting one day filling out my commissary paperwork, and a brother was sitting beside me, and he was stuck, right? So I offered help. I said, "Brother, what's going on? What you doing? Can I help you?" And he was trying to do the math, right, to add stuff up. And he was stuck on a math equation that was 2 plus 2. 2 plus 2. And I looked at it and I'm like, okay, brother, let's work this out. Right. And we worked it out together. And I took a look around the cell and I looked at the black men that was there. There were in Richmond, there were 4 gangs for the parts of town, right? North Side, Wickham Court, East End, South Side. And there were 4 phones on the tier, and each phone was controlled by a gang. What I realized was that 95% of the black men that were there came out of the projects. And I knew it was reaffirmed in me then that this is why, this is the work that I have to do to change this. We have to stop this. Because there were men that were unable to reach their divinity based on colonization, socialization, miseducation, and judgment. Now, the other thing that I learned was judgment in multiple ways, right? Because as a crackhead, of course, I was judged by people. And judgment doesn't feel good, right? So a question comes up. Why do we practice all of these things that's supposed to make us so holy and great, but yet we judge one another? And this is part of this difference, where we hold space of better than. And it shows up in multiple ways, right? This colonized system that we're living in, our day-to-day life, dealing with one another. Now, part of, you know, my experience with all of that, with learning how it feels to be judged, there was a situation where I judged, right? Because my recovery, my resilience sprung out of this organization that some call Narcotics Anonymous. And when I first went into these rooms with people who had shared addictions, I judged them because I was better than them. I ain't like these people up in here. And it was upon humbling myself and finally getting to a point to understand that I was just like them, that the resilience, the recovery sprung up in me. Question is, how do we judge the other humans or people that we interact with? What's coming up for us there? I think in some way we all likely have experienced judgment as well as judged others. This is part of the difference that we have to get away from. Okay, it is 5 minutes to 12. I've been talking that long. Okay, I gotta quicken this up a little bit. I know some people may as top it up or hour, some may have to leave. Um, if you have to, thank you for being here. If not, uh we will begin to wind things down a little bit, right? And I got pages and pages of my story to go, right? Y'all only got a little bit of it so far. Okay, let's move through this, right? Let me get out of the southern pace and move a bit into the northern pace, because y'all know I'm a southern guy, right? And we move at a different pace, right? So judgment. So when we begin to put judgment into check, we can move into this thing that we call equity, right? We can move into this thing called inclusion. We can move into this thing of creating space for others to be themselves. After that, I had an opportunity to come out where I'm sitting today into the Pacific Northwest. This place where it is great, where I learned this term called sunbreaks. For my folks in the South and on the East Coast that's here, a sunbreak is when the sun breaks through the clouds for a few minutes and then the clouds come back and capture it. That's a sunbreak, right? That's, you know. Um, to wrap up this thing that keeps us focusing on the differences that we have with others, To move past that, we have to do what's called personal work, personal growth and development. And a leadership model that's called adaptive leadership, right, is called an adaptive challenge. With all of the work that so many of us do to create change in this world, we're all working through this adaptive challenge because ultimately, what we have to do is we have to not only change our thoughts, our thinking, our beliefs, and our behaviors, but we have to encourage others to change their thinking, beliefs, and behaviors. That's hard work. Oftentimes, people are unable to see themselves and to see how things may come up in them. I'm working with an organization that is doing, something that I love, succession planning, right? And what I'm experiencing is there's two members in this organization that are really critical for the organizational success, and they don't like each other. Ultimately, because each of them have judged each other and they find them lacking, although they fail to see their own lack. What is our ability to turn the camera and the focus on ourselves so that we can improve ourselves and then in turn show up better for others? So as I came out here to the Pacific Northwest, one of the things that I knew I had to do was or that I wanted to do en route coming out here was to go back to school. That I did. I got 3 degrees in 5 years. I was working my butt off, right? Started around spiritual studies and then education and then psychology, all to answer this question of how do we be better together? In that, I found this thing that I call rites of passage. Not only I call it that, but a lot of people call it that, right? I didn't invent it. Our ancestors did. When I performed mines, it was like the world just opened up. The greens that I saw were greener. The trees that I saw were treeier, right? If there's such a thing, right? And I asked the question, what would it be like if our children experienced this younger? I asked myself, what would I have been like if I experienced this at 40? If I experienced it at 30? If I experienced it at 15, what would my life have been like? Right? What difference would this have made? And I set out to do that. Part of the issue with, or the thing with rites of passage is it's about cultural identity, understanding who you are in this world based on how culture impacts. What comes up in that are some questions, right? Who am I? Am I who I think I am? Who am I to you and who are you to me? And a bigger question based on our place, space, and time is how did I become who I am? So in this exploration of cultural identity, and I've gone through a couple of changes, right? Grew up Catholic, became Muslim, started gravitating towards African spiritual systems, learning about this place that we call Africa, this continent, right, with all of these different ways of being. And what I began to see and experience was the loss, the cultural loss that happens and the socialization that happens based on colonialism and saying that there's only one right way, and that is the white way. How has this impacted my life? And the question is, how has it impacted you all's lives? How has it impacted everyone's life? That's what I want us to explore. What has been the impact of whiteness on all of us, on Black people, on Asian people, on Latinx people, Latinos, on Pacific Islanders? What has been the impact on indigenous people? What has been the impact of colonialization, of this thing called whiteness? And what has been the impact of whiteness on white people? Oftentimes, white people think that they're immune because, of course, whiteness has been made invisible. And I know that there are some folks who want to explore, to learn how has all of this impacted me? And how can I move to become a better human so that we all can get along, right? We all have to understand that we have been miseducated, that the system that we live in has educated us, has socialized us for a purpose. Part of that purpose is keeping us apart. Horizontal oppression. The more we're apart, the more this colonization system works. White supremacy works. The goal of white supremacy is to keep us apart and separate. And part of the way that we begin to end white supremacy is one, to understand who we are in space and time, to get back the cultural loss that impacts each of us, regardless of race, regardless of gender, regardless of ethnicity. One of the things that I've heard often is that, race is just a construct. My response is always, how long does it have to be a construct or something made up for it to become real? Right? Because we've been living in this construct, this matrix, for hundreds of years. In my discovery, what I have found is part of our way to break down and to break through this thing called white supremacy is through cultural identity development. This is why in this series of workshops that I created, I have them in different cohort tracks. Because when you begin to explore cultural identity, that's something that initially we have to do as individual groups so that we can have the heartfelt, deep conversations that we need to bring understanding and begin to understand that um um what's the phrase? Unity does not mean uniformity. right? Because so often we feel like in order to be together, we all have to think the same, and we don't. What we do have to do is understand who we are and how we show up in the world based on socialization, begin to decolonize to undo that and get back to who we really are to recover our lost, stolen, impacted, um, repressed identities. One of the things that I've learned as I have explored and looked at who I am as an African is to see how much of the different African cultures show up in me and show up in others that I see, right? So a question for us all is, what have we given up to gravitate in proximity to this thing called whiteness? And what do we need to do to recover and to move into who we are? And that's an exploration process. And in doing that, I think that we can know, I have faith that in that we can find our shared humanity. Because it is ultimately in the shared humanity that brings us to ethical engagement with each other. Being able to accept not only myself and who I am, but who the other is. One of the things that those of us of different races and ethnicities have experienced is this thing called internalized oppression. Part of healing that is through cultural identity and knowing and accepting who I am. So in this, let me just share a few things. I'm going to share a couple of slides in a minute. So I read to you all about mature global citizens, right? I'm going to begin to close us out now and just allow a couple of minutes just in case there are any comments before our time is up. So what we believe, humanity thrives when we recognize our fundamental interconnectedness. Every life holds inherent value and dignity, and we are strong when guided by compassion, respect, and shared responsibility for our world. True leadership calls us to be stewards of the earth, to live with kindness, and to pursue harmony across all relationships through intentional acts, both large and small. We can shape the future where love, courage, and empathy binds us together as we collectively reach for a world where we can all flourish. Now, what does mature mean? Right? When we think about this thing, mature global citizen, right? Because when I was talking with someone about it, and they was like, mature seems like old. This must be for old people. And I'm like, no, it's for all of us, right? So being mature in this sense, and I know I myself, as I'm sure some of you all were when you were young, you were really mature, right? Some of us, when we were young, we thought we were grown until we found out otherwise, right? We actually got grown and said, ooh, ooh, So it's about emotional integration, right? The capacity to hold paradox, contradiction, and complexity without collapsing into binary one-way thinking, right? It's about accepting and leaning into ancestral wisdom, understanding that we're part of a continuum, that moves through space and time. It's trauma-informed wholeness, as Bell Hooks says, right? The ability to love and lead from a place of healing versus woundedness. Spiritual groundedness, right? It's about what Adrienne Marie Brown calls emergent strategy, right? The wisdom to know when to act, when to wait, when to transform. And I ask when to speak, because that's one of my things that I've been trying to learn, right? Kevin, when do you say something? When do you keep your mouth shut? Right. So this is maturity. When we think about global, right, we're talking about a planetary consciousness, understanding that local and global are interconnected, and that what happens in nature impacts us all, right? Decolonizing universalism. With whiteness, there has been this thought that whiteness and Marimba Ani with Yurugu does a great job with this, right? Talking about how whiteness has been universal. It's been made universal, right? With everything that we do, it's the white way. We have to get away from that, right? And understand that the white way isn't the right way, right? And begin to explore, because so many of our cultural ways of being has been repressed, been told that it wasn't, that it was savage, that it was uncivilized. So a lot of us have left it behind, especially so many of us that have been educated in the American educational system, whether K through 12 or higher ed. There may be a few of us on here, and I include myself when I say that, us that have done that, right? How do we understand that that has been part of our socialization and this spreading that the white way is the right way? So there's an exploration of what have we lost that is needed, right, in doing that, so that we can find our interconnectedness. The part about citizenship, beloved community, right? Dr. King said, vision of citizenship rooted in love and justice rather than exclusion. And let's not get it twisted. When I say love, I'm not talking about that lovey-dovey thing where people say, oh, we just need to love one another. No, it's a bit deeper than that, right? It's a bit deeper. Understanding that we are planetary citizens and that we are responsible for life in our human community, and what we do to the earth also happens to us. So, being a mature global citizen is about holding complexity, practicing interdependence, embodied justice, honoring difference, and stewarding the future of those that will come behind us. In order to do this, I'm going to share screen real quick as I roll through these last few things, just so you can see as we move through.
Is there a way to get some of those notes? Because you're just reading off. It would be good to like go back and like reflect on some of the things you said. I try to take notes really fast, but is there a way?
On mature global citizens, yes, there is a way, and I
Well,
will
there was a
share
lot of
that.
things you talked. You talked about mature. You talked about a lot of different stuff. I would like to reflect back on, but that's just like some feedback. That what you're saying and what you're reading and your summaries of things are really, really, really great. And so it's really good material to reflect on throughout time.
Okay, thank you for that. So what'll happen, because oftentimes I know when I'm working with Doc will say something to me, and I said, say that again, and she said, I was in the flow. I don't know what I said, right? So it's the same thing here. I'm a bit in the flow. I don't know what I said, but that's why we're recording, because I'm gonna put this up on YouTube, right? So you all can go and look at it again and share with your friends, because here's what's important. For these three cohorts that's coming up, right? And I'm gonna ask you all to go to my website and to email me to get information. Information isn't quite up on the website yet, it's coming, right? But to reach out to me and tell me you're interested in that. Now there will be a price tag, right? 3 sessions is going to be $249 for the series. So I know that you all work with a bunch of people that need help, right? That this would be good for, right? That you think would be great professional development, right? So encourage them. I'm going to give a little bit about what will happen in those as we explore, as we do them. But I need you all to encourage others to sign up for them so that they can be full and we all can begin to create this movement for mature global citizens, right? So I haven't shared yet. I'm gonna share a bit of, let me see here we go, this one. Share. I know you all disappeared. Let me find y'all. Where did you go to over there? Okay. So this is the pathway to healing, right? So it's understanding that we've experienced colonial socialization, right? With that comes psychic trauma. Then there are the impacts of that. And then the healing pathways is through cultural reclamation, narrative healing, community practices, and decolonization for everyone. Everyone. So part of doing that work then leads to cultural responsive, transformative, transformational servant and spiritual leadership and development. Right. Let's see if I can. So in that, we also talked about the ready to be framework. Part of that framework is understanding one, race equity. Right. We're not separating race from equity, because ultimately, with all of the equity work that has happened, Black folks still seem to end up on the bottom. Why is that? Because we're not dealing with anti-Blackness and white supremacy. We have to. Access and accessibility. Difference, right? Diversity for me is about difference. It's not just about people who look different, but how do we begin to work with how people show up and their differences and their different identities, right? How do we work with all of that? And belonging and being, or being and belonging, or really at some point I'm gonna cut belonging, right? Because for belonging, someone else has to do something. That's what we call inclusion, right? So people have to have inclusive practices for people to feel belonging. Being is about this internal faith and knowing and confidence in who you are and how you show up in the world. Where you don't need anybody to do anything for you because you belong everywhere you go. Because that's just how you rock and roll, right? In the workshop structure, we will be using Africana, Indigenous, Asian frameworks for humanity. Now, for my Latino brothers and sisters, there are 3 categories when we think about our Latinx or Latino and Latina brothers and sisters. There's Latino white, there's Afro Latina, and there is Indigenous Latina. So you would have to find your tracks based on your identity. And if you have not done that work, we can do that work as well. Right. So looking at social structures, governance structures, ways of knowing, science and technology, how nature works and how it shapes our world, movement and memory, which is about bringing back who we are and getting to this reclamation, right? Using the values that's laid out. In these series, we will explore in each group. I'm just going to show one, I'm going to stop sharing, right? But each group will begin to explore these things, social structures. Who are we to others? How are Black people viewed by others? Governance structures. Who are we to each other? What are the relationships we have with each other? Ways of knowing, right? How have people defined their existence, right? How do we view nature? What's the impact of that in movement and memory? How all of this happens over time. And you all can see this one is for the Black folks. This one is for folks who identify as people of color, right? And there are ways that we will deal with however you identify to explore that in these sessions. And then there is one for white people, right? Now, we know some white people that need to do some work. Let's encourage them to come to these. So this is really about how do we change our sets, right? Leaders who heal themselves from colonial socialization are less likely to reproduce oppressive systems, and that's what it is. We often forget, I'm going to stop sharing. Oftentimes, we don't put together the fact that when we talk about dismantling systems, that systems are made up of people. And in order to change systems, we have to change people. I'm going to leave it there. And thank everyone for coming. More information will be coming out about the sessions, the cohorts, and I'm asking that if you're interested, please sign up. If you have friends, family, coworkers that should attend, please encourage them to sign up.
Kevin, I added a chart that I created in the chat if people want to take that with them too. And I can send you a copy of it.
Oh, wow, great.
Yeah.
Okay, so if everyone goes to the chat, you'll see that Tim has put a drawing in, and you can download that and open it up.
The interesting thing about the drawing for me was that when you started smudging, I made the smoke in the middle. And I looked at the smoke and it looks like a hand. And then about 10 minutes later, you were talking about the hand
Hmm.
of reaching out. So for me, at least, this image really resonates. My listening resonates with what you've said. So thank you for that. It means that I'm doing my work when I get that kind of confirmation. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm gonna stop